Hey guys, welcome to Rack and Rod Chronicles here on YouTube. First we want to say thank you to everybody that's been tuning into the show and tuning in to our channel here on YouTube. We definitely appreciate it. And if you follow us on Instagram or Facebook, you've kind of seen some posts that I've been putting up about some truck parts. And the reason for that you'll see in the rest of this episode. But you know, with the show and with hunting and fishing, we do a lot of travel. And one of the biggest parts of travel, obviously, is the vehicle that you're taking on the trip with you. So we got together with some awesome automotive partners, and these are not paid advertisements, guys. We are not making any money from any of our partners, whether it be on the TV show or here on YouTube. That is not why we do what we do. But I reached out and wanted to work with a few companies on kind of making the truck a little bit more reliable than it already is. So obviously we all drive our own vehicles, but the majority of the trips, the longer trips, especially for here, the guys in PA, myself, Keith and Rick, my truck gets used quite a bit. So yes, I drive a diesel truck. Yes, it's good on gas mileage to an extent. When you start adding, weight into it, whether it's quads and UTVs, things of that nature, you start really putting some heavy tolls on the vehicle. So this first, you're going to see a couple different episodes on kind of the rebuild of the truck to make it a little bit better of a rig for what we need it for. So if you're a gearhead like myself, most hunters, male or female, have a vehicle that they use specifically for hunting and fishing. So instead of driving around stock and maybe not getting the best potential out of it, we decided we were going to film some of these episodes on why we're doing what we're doing to the truck, and what it would do for you if you followed along in the same order. So this first install that we did on the truck is from GDP Tuning. Now this in particular part that we're installing today is specific to a diesel pickup. So GDP would be if you're driving a Power Stroke, a Cummins, a Duramax, any of those diesel platforms. These are the guys you want to look to for certain parts. And the part we're installing on the truck today is a GDP air intake for the F250 6.7 liter Power Stroke diesel, which is my truck, which is quote unquote the team rig, as I have aptly named it. So we're gonna head outside here into the garage and driveway and walk you through the install of this intake. Super simple, not a lot to do, but again, just take your time. And if you're not a wrench head, a gear head, yes, it's easy. Follow step-by-step instructions to get the factory airbox out and this intake in. But if you do not feel comfortable, we do not recommend doing it yourself. Take it to a garage and let them install it for you. So without further ado, I'll see you guys. We are out in the garage right now, and I apologize for any mess that you might be able to see on camera. The garage gets used heavily with hunting and fishing equipment, all of my car care equipment, so I apologize ahead of time. So this is what we are installing today, the GDP 4-inch open air intake. Give you a nice logoed box. Now, unfortunately, because of some technical difficulties of getting the factory airbox out, some language was used that I did not want to have to put onto our channel. So we cut down the video and you'll understand. But give you an idea here, guys. This is the hunk of plastic, better known as the factory airbox or factory intake from Ford, that we did pull out. We did have a few slight issues, hence why you did not see the removal of this from the actual truck. So basically what you're doing is you are taking out the actual airbox, which houses the air filter. Now most Ford trucks in the Power Stroke lineup has a good meter, which is attached to the airbox. You do not have to worry about this. It's not being used on the new intake. The other thing that you have to be careful with, and this is why I mentioned in the earlier part of the video, if you are not a wrench head or a gear head and do not feel comfortable taking the factory parts out and putting the new parts in, we definitely recommend taking it to a garage, only for the fact that right here, this hole used to house the mass airflow sensor from the factory, which goes back to your truck's computer. You don't want to break that. That is not a cheap piece of electronics that you want to have to go buy. So definitely, again, if you do not feel comfortable doing the install or the removal of the factory parts, definitely take it to a garage, let them do it for you. So you'll see, actually right here, that was a hole for one of the screws that have to be removed from the factory airbox. So it's an 8mm head. You're going to use an 8mm quick wrench or a socket and remove that. And then back on the portion which actually mounts to the turbo on the diesel engine, turbo goes in the oval side, airbox attached to the circle end. There is also another tab right here for another 8mm head bolt that you're going to need to remove in order to wiggle the box out. The problem that we had was, you'll see on the hose there's two clamps, hose clamps, and the reason that we had so much issues is that either at the factory or a different garage, my vehicles do not go anywhere for oil changes or standard maintenance. So somebody had these hose clamps spun all the way around, and I could not reach the heads to get them loosened. And then on the very bottom, and this is a very important part when you are installing the new GDP air intake, is these little nubs right there are through a rubber grommet at the bottom of the bracket that holds the airbox in. Big thing to keep in mind is when you pull this out, if those rubber grommets come out, you must remove them and put them back into the holes they belong, because they will be used for the air intake that you're putting in from GDP. So now that this was out of the way, let's head out to the truck and walk you through the basic install. Now the intake is in, and again, I apologize for the mess up on this video. I just didn't cut it when I should have and restarted, so I do apologize. This is real life, guys, just like the TV show. We're not trying to hide anything. So the intake is installed, but I will walk you through the entire install. It's super simple. You don't have to be, a crazy mechanic to do it, but again, we're going to put it out there. If you do not feel comfortable, please take it to a professional to have it installed. We'll see you in a second. All right, guys, we are out here in front of my F250 Diesel. This does have the 6.7 liter Power Stroke engine in it, and when you go onto the GDP website, make sure if you are a Ford, a Dodge, a Chevy truck owner with the diesel engine or the diesel platform, make sure you look for your year's truck. They are not all the same. So for instance, my truck 2011 through 2011 through 2016 are the era of truck that the intake that I need it will fit. 2017 they made some changes. Anything earlier than 2011 they made some changes, and then you go all the way back to the 7.3 liter Power Stroke, which is a completely different monster, and will definitely use a different intake. So I'm gonna be out of frame for most of this so I can walk you through the setup and install, but super easy, guys. So just follow along and check out the new 4-inch GDP intake that we installed on the team rig. So here we go without further ado. So as you see, we'll get nice and close for you. So guys, right here, you can see these two bolts sticking out. Those are from the new clamps that come with the silicone attachment from GDP. So you saw the air hose that we uninstalled before. The oval end would attach to your turbo, the circular end to your piping. Same idea. So you have the silicone, 5-inch on one side, 4-inch on the other. The 5-inch side goes over the turbo inlet. You're gonna use your first hose clamp, 5-inch hose clamp, because again, 4-inch, 5-inch sides. So the 5-inch clamp would be here, the 4-inch clamp would be here. So once you have the air box completely out, you will notice right here and right here, there's two little pinch marks on there on those hoses. That was from the factory air box. There was a little cradle in there that these hoses have to come out of in order to get the rest of the air hose out. But one, they're using a high heat silicone hose, so you don't have to worry about the heat from the engine, you know, expanding it, breaking it, melting it, anything to that effect. So you're gonna go again 5-inch side to the turbo, 4-inch side to the air pipe. So once you get to that point, once you have the silicone on to the turbo inlet, you're going to take your air pipe, which is pretty easy to figure out which end needs to go where. They do have the GDP badge on top, so as long as you have that facing up, you're at least somewhat in the right direction. So you're going to slide your air pipe into the 4-inch side of the silicone hose, and once that is in, you're going to tighten the 4-inch hose clamp. So pretty simple so far, right? So here's where the tricky part comes in, and this is where you have to be careful. Not that it's tricky, but you don't want to break this next piece. So that it was out of the way, because there is one piece that you do have to install. It is behind the pipe. I will show you this in a second. But you want to make sure that your mass airflow sensor, which is right here, my index finger, this is what came out of the stock airbox. So when you remove it, it does have quite a long pigtail wire on it. You can set it up here onto your radiator frame. But before I got into messing with anything over here near the filter or the part that needs to go in the back, I wanted to get that put back in. So it's two Torx bits that are going to be, well, one Torx bit that will be used to get two Torx head screws out of the factory airbox. Now, GDP does send a bag with two new screws that will go in there, or you can reuse the factory screws, and that's what I did because I had them out. I already had the Torx bit. I knew exactly what it was, and it was a pretty simple setup. So certain manufacturers, the mass airflow sensor will have an arrow on it which tells you the direction of airflow. You do not want to put that in backwards. Obviously the air is going to come through your filter and work its way into the turbo. So with the Ford, it's pretty simple. There's two screws and they're at diagonals. So you really couldn't mess it up, because if I tried to put it in upside down, it wouldn't work. So with the Ford, it was a little bit easier than some other ones I have seen. So I put the mass airflow sensor in. Once that was in, I knew I couldn't break it. It was out of the way. And Now we're going to flip to the back side of the pipe. So it's a little harder to see. But right here is a bracket that goes down, and you can see the nut right there, which GDP does provide. There's a nut and a bolt, and there's actually another one set a little further back. And what that does is it has a stand that keeps it from vibrating and falling down into the cavity. But it goes into that hole that I explained about the rubber grommet before. So that's what holds that in place. So once you have that tightened, you're ready to go. This is solid. It's not going anywhere. You have it tightened at the turbo end. Now you're set to put your filter on. Now, GDP does offer two different style filter kits. You could do their dry filter, which is what I chose, only for the fact that we're traveling up and down dirt roads a lot of times. And then they do an oiled filter. The difference being is the oiled filter can be cleaned and re-oiled. This one can be cleaned to an extent, you know, with a low power air hose, just blow the heavy dust off of it and put it back on, or you could just purchase a replacement filter. Buying a replacement filter to me was a little bit easier than having to re-oil it when it got way too dirty and way too dusty from traveling up and down dirt roads on farms and so on and so forth. So went with the dry application, a little bit easier to deal with as far as maintenance. But basically it slides right onto the pipe. Again, you have a silicone back end here with the hose clamp. The hose clamp does come with the filter, so all you have to do is literally get it onto the pipe and tighten it down.